So basically, Maroksi bind and is the lecture topic for today, and then I was going to go over three games after that. But I wanted to take a look. I wanted to get right into this. Basically, Maroksi bind is a component of the Sicilian opening, and yeah, let's get started. So yeah, e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. And then basically, what makes it the bind here is that very early c4. It usually doesn't happen immediately. It usually happens basically a few moves after this, knight to f6. But here, c4 becomes a more and more playable move. There's many lines that involve it. Say f3 here, or say bishop to e3 here potentially, yeah, f3, d6, and then c4 here. So with this structure, this is really the structure that I was looking at. So this is the Prinz variation, it looks like. But yeah, basically, the question is, how do you use this to your advantage as white? You've never, you're basically taking what was an open rook file and putting a pawn on it, and making it so that the rook has less, has less ability to play on an open file. This is going to require some defense sometimes maintenance, but it's going to give you good control over d5, but somewhat less control and less ability to control d4. That's the main concept in this opening. So with this c4 in place on move 6, and with this this f3 move, we can look at the main lines for black. Main lines for black include queen to b6, they include e6, they include g6, and knight takes d4. Of these options, I think knight takes d4 is probably objectively the worst. I think if you play knight takes d4 and simplify, I think that's the most beneficial for white. So say knight takes d4, queen takes d4. Now this queen is on d4, and there's not really much that black can do to kind of threaten it. The best idea for the best method for black is e5, but then that creates like a huge weakness on d6. So that's a big thing in this situation. Basically, there's no move that will disrupt this queen on e5 without creating other weaknesses on the board. So basically, I think of those options for black, and the options, here in this f3 c4 opening, of these options being queen to b6, e6, g6, and knight takes d4. I think knight takes d4 is the weakest. Let's take a look at queen to b6. Queen to b6 makes intuitive sense. How does white respond to this? I'm pretty sure the answer should be knight to b3. In terms of looking at this, knight to c2 is actually much more common than knight to d3. So let's look at this line. This is the knight to c2 line. Knight to c2, g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7. And white has a number of options, but basically this will involve, potentially posting a knight on d5, potentially after the trade on f6. So bishop to g5, bishop takes f6, and then posting the knight on d5 could be good. What are the other weaknesses in white's position? This b2 pawn is kind of a defensive liability. If you want to move the bishop out, this pawn on b2 needs to be defended. In terms of options for white, rook to b1, queen to queen to d3, bishop to e2. But all of these sort of point towards something that's a little bit, that's generally consistently true in the Maroksi bind, which is that the attack in Maroksi bind positions for white tends to be a bit slower. It tends not to involve the really quick h4, h5 advancements on the king side. In these situations, it is a little bit slower. And hey, good morning, Smiggy. Thank you very much for joining the stream. But yeah, so bishop to e2, rook to b1, queen to d3. All of these options, I think, provide value to white. Say a3 could be good, a3, b4, and white can try a queenside expansion. But basically, the kingside attacks that are common in the Sicilian, those tend to be held back in the Maroksi bind situations. Rook to b1, knight to b4. Knight to b4, by the way, is playable because on pawn takes b4, bishop takes c3, and the rook gets taken. But yeah, a bunch of options here. Knight to b4, pawn takes, bishop takes c3. This ends up being good for white. Hey, good morning, Aphelion. Thanks for joining the stream. Thank you guys for being here. But yeah, so there's a bunch of different options here. rook to b1, and then knight to g4 is an appealing option for black, as is knight to b4. But what you can tell about this position is that more moves are getting spent on the queen side here than they are getting spent on the king side. So what I really wanted to show, what I really wanted to show too is, since we did this cool lecture yesterday. Hey, good morning, Ansh. We did this cool lecture on how to find games. So what I was interested in looking at was, I wanted to show people how to do this. GM games, file type, PGN, and find the variation too. So we want to look for GM games that are played with this variation. So this is the Prinz variation, PRINS variation, and basically we can look we can look at the same way that we looked at this previously with this file type PGN type search on Google. We can basically know that the file that we're drawing is going to be the right file type for chess analysis. So this first one is from GitHub, and we can search Prinz Variation, and we can find this game. So basically, with this game, I'm hoping that oh, okay. So it's the Sicilian Prinz Variation. So this is this is something different. Let's look. So this Prinz variation for black is, yeah, Prinz, but this is interesting. So I guess what I'm saying here is that basically this this search method, if there are enough games, we can end up finding them. Let's do it by ECO code instead. So Sicilian defense opening. This is the we can find the ECO code on this. I think. I forgot how to do this exactly, but let's see. How do you export? I forgot how you export the ECO. I think you might have to go to the PGN file, but I think what's kind of interesting about this is that there are like methods to do this. So this opening we can export and go to this. So we know this game, this theory exactly. But what I want to do is find the correct ECO for it. If we find the ECO, we can make the rest of the Google search easier. All right. File type PGN. This could be interesting. All right, so let's look at this way. So what we've gotten here is a bunch of different ways that this is what's interesting is I looked at this file yesterday, and it's a it's like an opening book from a chess program. And here we can load this. So hopefully this will work. This isn't a PGN, or this isn't an easy PGN format. I was hoping that we could demonstrate kind of what the basically what the good exports look like, but this is a little bit tricky. Let's try it this way. Let's just take a different game. This is two GMs playing a game with a fianchettoed Maroczy bind type position. But what I really wanted to show off was kind of the method of finding these PGN games, or these big PGNs, these files. You can search Maroczy bind GM games file type PGN, and it'll only return things that are already usable PGNs to put into the chess analysis board. So yeah, I don't know. I'm into this kind of stuff. Like, I think it's cool that you can kind of come up with a good way of streamlining your search process. And now we've got a GM game that comes with that early C4 that we were looking at. So let's see what happens when GMs play this C4 line. We were thinking about how to play the Maroczy bind, and basically this is that. We were able to find that using that search method that I like, this file type PGN, and with that we were able to successfully find the games that we wanted. So this is 2650s playing the Accelerated Dragon with the Maroczy bind formation. Hey, welcome Haroop. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Yeah, no. I mean, I was stoked about this. I was thinking if there was a cool way to work in this, work in this concept. But yeah, this GM games, this way of searching, I think that could be useful. I don't know. There are other ways in which that kind of search could be useful, but yeah, this I think could be a good idea. Anyways, this early C4, so E4 D4. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Barath. I appreciate it. Thank you. Um, Thanks for being here. So E4 and then C4 here, going up against this G6. So this is the early Maroczy bind. Let's see how these masters play this. So knight to C3, D6, bishop to E2. And we're in pretty well established lines, but let's just look at like this is a GM game. These players both play an excellent game. Accuracy's over 90. But yeah, what I'm guessing without knowing this game, you saw exactly how I found this game. I've never seen this game before. Is that basically this is going to involve a much slower kind of development of a kingside attack. This is characteristic of the Maroczy bind position, and in these situations, white can even play on the queen side. But the game is not kind of formatted with a normal thematic, H4, H5 type early Sicilian attack. It's going to be a slower. It's going to be kind of a slower development on the queen side. So queen a5, f3, bishop to e6, rook to c1, rook to c8, and b3. So a lot of play on the queen side relative to a normal Sicilian, as opposed to the situation in the normal Sicilian where basically, black just sort of goes for this, black just sort of goes for this aggressive thing. Yeah, h4, h5. Yeah, exactly. Well, h4, h5 is really interesting. h4, h5 comes up a lot in the normal Sicilian theory. Yeah, no, so h4, h5 is definitely thematically Sicilian. What's interesting about this is that with the c4, it seems like these moves happen less. They might still be playable, but what's interesting is that the Maroczy bind goes for this kind of slower attack with more white play on the queen side than normal. So the question was, someone suggested, and by the way, if anyone has any ideas for lessons, post them in the lesson idea section of the Discord. There's a bunch there. I need to respond to everybody in there. But yeah, the lesson ideas like that channel. All of that stuff, there's plenty of opportunities to get your idea for a lesson into the stream. So feel free to suggest ideas on there. It seems like mostly people have been sending games, which take a while to get onto the stream. But there's a lot of lesson space time that we can kind of get to. So this is following up on the lesson of how to play the Maroczy bind, and the main concept is play a more kind of reserved attack with within the Sicilian. The full-on attack, h4, h5, g4, those tend to be ideas that are established less quickly in the Sicilian lines. So here, b3 is good, rook to b8, but this is just a lot of general play from white on the black queen side relative to normal. In the non-Maroczy bind, often white just lets black kind of do whatever on the queen side while white's attacking on the king side. That's not the case in the Maroczy bind formations. This c4 is both restrictive enough for black and forwarding enough for white that this pushes white forward. So rook d1, king f8, king e1, bishop to e8, knight to c2, and yeah, this ends up being pretty good. The play is all on the queen side here, so there's the h4, h5, which is a really good idea in many Sicilians. That's not the most efficient plan. It's not what GMs play here. Hey, welcome, Forky. Thank you very much for joining the stream. So yeah, knight to d5, b6, b4. And white's pushing aggressively. Ideas include bishop to g5, f6, bishop to e3, e6. But all of this looks good. Go through main repertoire. Yeah, sure, I can do that. No, Julio, I think I don't see you for this morning. I think that today it's or this morning it's the real, it's eccentric horse, and it's TK as a game. So yeah, I can try to figure out when the most recent game that we did, Julio. But yeah, I'll check it out. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for joining the stream. Cool. Yeah. So one thing that we can talk about too, I like this just because I did it myself. But yeah. Uh, any openings that lead to endgame soon? Yeah, sure. We can definitely look at that. There's a uh, yeah. I mean, we're doing some endgame study. But yeah, Calcina, we can look for your most recent game. It should be on Discord. We've done a few recently for sure. So I know that they're on there. But let me check the schedule. Um, let's see. The most recent game from Calcina was certainly not long ago. You should DM me on Discord and I'll tell you pretty quick. But yeah, so yeah, this Rui Lopez Berlin defense leads to a quick game. But one thing that I wanted to show everyone, and this again, I'm not trying to sell this, but I just think it's a cool opportunity. One of the things that I did recently is this Fide Titles. So one of the things that FIDE has done, FIDE is the international body of chess, is basically they have multiple titles. So everyone's sort of familiar with Grandmaster, International Master, FIDE Master. These are titles that everyone knows already. But one of the things that's interesting is that FIDE has actually expanded the titles that are here. So I'm just going to post the link to this. And basically this link shows you how to earn a FIDE title. There's 12 here, and it does cost $75 USD, which ideally, I think it would be better if it was free. But anyways, because GM, IM, FM, CM, my memory is that those are free titles to get. But you can actually get yourself you can actually get yourself to this to a title here. If you want a title from FIDE, these arena titles are also official titles. So I just got my AGM this week. This was interesting. But these arena titles here, basically, these ACM, AFM, AIM, and AGM, these are within reach. I bring this up because Aphelion is working on his ACM right now. I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, people often go around playing tournaments with GM, IM, FM, and CM on their wall charts. And basically, with this, with these titles, right, you can get, I don't know, probably like 13 or 1400. But you can get a. Sorry to be slow, Calcina. I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you on that soon. But yeah, we've done games from you fairly recently, so I want to make sure that we know. But yeah, you can win. So 13, 1400, and you can get yourself an Arena Candidate Master title. Again, this costs $75 USD roughly. It's paid in euros, I think. But basically, this is an available option. So if you're someone who wants a title from FIDE, there's not just these four or just these eight, but there's a full arena title system available. So I got my AGM this week. It's an official FIDE title, and yeah, it's still a new system, so there's not really much of a way. I don't think you can play Title Tuesday yet. I think you'd have to press chess.com. But yeah, Aphelion's working on that right now. And yeah, no, I mean, this is one of these things. It's one of those things that people don't know too much about. Yeah, so it's on the FIDE Arena website. But yeah, so if you get the FIDE Arena client, which I think costs $25 a year, and then you pay for the title, which I think is an additional $25 to $50. Not many people know about this. This system is new. This system doesn't really, it doesn't. People aren't. It's basically hasn't spread yet. So, but if you actually want a FIDE title, I didn't have one before, but this week I got my AGM. So now I'm just not an NM. I'm also an NM and an AGM for whatever that's worth. But an official FIDE title. So if people ask you if you have a FIDE title, here is an official FIDE master title that you can get yeah. So yeah, so I don't know. It's probably 1340, 1400 to get ACM. But the thing about it is, for many years, 60, 70 years, FIDE had never given master titles to people below, 2300 FIDE. And then now you can basically get you can get an official FIDE master title for yourself and say, yes, you are an official FIDE master. Or a FIDE, a recognized someone with a recognized FIDE master title. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Aphelion. I think you should. You have an official title, so you should be able to play Title Tuesday. That's just by definition. So, anyways, I'm a big fan of this system. I think it's cool that I could get an AGM. But yeah, this FIDE titling system is a cool idea. So yeah, so if anyone wants to get a FIDE title, yeah, I mean, they'll be higher level titled players than you, but they basically this title, they have a FIDE title and you can have a FIDE title. So at the end of the day, they're both titled players under the FIDE system. So I would get it. I've clearly put my money where my mouth is, and basically I've gotten my AGM title. I don't know, but I don't know what's in it necessarily for FIDE. I guess, I mean, to me, $75 USD is, it's not nothing, but I don't know how much FIDE could possibly be making on this. If you actually do the math on here, it looks like this has probably raised FIDE $100,000 or so. I mean, in the entire existence of this titling system, FIDE's made about $100,000 off of it. So it doesn't really make, in the broader context of a large worldwide organization, I wouldn't figure $100,000 would be the shifting point. But anyways, depending on what FIDE's getting out of it, you can get a lot out of it. You can go from an untitled chess player to a titled chess player with your play on the internet, and that seems like a big opportunity to me. So yeah, this early FIDE titling system, AGM, AIM, AFM, ACM, you can become an official FIDE titled player, and I have, so I think it's a great opportunity. Yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying. I think it's one of these things that you can get, you can kind of learn quickly. What's the ACM rating? Sorry, my bad. It's right over. Yeah, it's right here. But yeah, what I'm saying is, if you want to become a titled FIDE master, right, or someone with a FIDE master title, you can do that. You can do that pretty quickly. Aphelion's working on it. I got mine, and this is something that not many people know about, but can provide an opportunity for you to get your FIDE master title. I wish it was free. I wish it didn't cost $75. But if you want a FIDE master title, so you can say I am an official person with a FIDE master title, this is a way to do it. This is pretty cool, and you can do it. So yeah, this. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, my fault. Yeah. So it looks like about 1100 here. But it's 1100 under the FIDE system. But what matters is you become one of the 12 people who, basically there's 12 FIDE titles, and you will have one of the 12 FIDE titles if you put your time in to get ACM. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, all things equal, if you want to put a FIDE title next to your name on a wall chart, that you can do it. Yeah, right. I mean, in the old days, if you had a GM, an IM, and an FM, whatever CM title, that would go next to your name on a FIDE rated tournament. But there's now an official 12 titles that you can get, so you can get one of the 12. And yeah, so this is something that you can put next to your name. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, resume. It's interesting. But yeah. It's an idea. I mean, that is an interesting question. But the main point is, this is a system that not many people know about. I feel like I can, I can share this system because I think it's cool, and it's up to you kind of what to do with it. So anyways, I thought it's a good opportunity. Aphelion's working on his, and when Aphelion gets his ACM title. Oh, the page that I'm looking at is just the official Fide Titles page. So this is just the top level Fide Titles page. It's got the ones that you think of, which are the GM, IM, FM. But it's included on the official Fide Titles Wikipedia page. So once Aphelion gets his ACM title, yeah, yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking, Smiggy. Like, I think it's a great opportunity. It gives you credibility from the international chess body. You get a full title. It goes next to your name. You could put it on your business card, I guess, if you wanted. But overall, I think that this is a system that not that many people know about, not that many people have heard of yet. And I just got my AGM this week. I think this is an opportunity. When you see an opportunity arise, this could be one that people want to jump on. But yeah, when Aphelion gets his ACM title, we will recognize him you will recognize him by his ACM Fide title. So yeah, I think it's a cool system. Again, I don't like paying money for it, but at the same time, if you want a Fide title, you can get one. This is an official Fide title, as recognized by the Fide title Wikipedia page and by Fide. So, anyways, I just wanted to elaborate on that. I thought it was a cool idea, but now I have a Fide title as well. So, anyways. But I feel like people should know about it. I think it's a cool idea. So if that all is interesting to you guys, I thought it was a cool thing that people could get on really quickly. And yes, I did, and I don't like having to pay for chess-related things. But at the same time, it's about $75 USD. To be honest, $75 USD is about what a tournament can cost sometimes. Basically for the entry cost of a single tournament, you can get a Fide title for yourself. As opposed to playing 100 tournaments to try to get the Fide title. You can instead pay $75 and get the client online and get a Fide title that way. So for me, it seems like it's worth it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't like paying for it. I think that it would be way better if it was free. But at the same time, it's an official Fide title. The thing is, it's not at this moment. I think that, if they're taking, Title Tuesday seriously, then I think that they should, or at least to be consistent, they should. But at this point, I don't think that I think you should. I mean, I think you can ask, but I think that they don't officially give that title. But that seems inconsistent to me because they, among other things, Chess.com has an M title, which isn't even a Fide title. So I don't know, whatever. But it's up to you in terms of what to do. So I think it's a cool opportunity. And now you can officially say that you're a Fide titled player, which I can as well. So anyways, cool stuff. I thought it was interesting. Yeah, just something you can do. Anyways, let's get back to the games. The Fide titling, well, I mean, I think they're both good. Honestly, I think the next Fide rated tournament that I play, I'm gonna request that the tournament director put my Fide title next to my name. If a Fide rated tournament has everybody's Fide title, their GM, IM titles, then I think they should put my AGM title next to my name too. This game, this comes with an early C4. This is 2 GMs. We found that game using that search method on Google that I thought was cool. D6, bishop to E2, knight takes D4, queen takes D4. And yeah, well, I mean, that, to be fair, look, what can I offer? I can giving free lessons is cool, but I figured that this has the potential to actually be something that's valuable to people, and not that many people know about it yet. So I figured that putting this Fide title, highlighting this Fide titling system, I thought it might be a cool idea for the stream. So every time people ask about titles, I'm gonna bring that up because I think it's neat. So anyways, if anyone else is interested on working or basically I played a Fide tournament on a Fide rated game against a Filion on there yesterday. But if anyone else is interested in that titling system, that is available. So yeah, if you want to play Aphelion on there, Aphelion is working on his title. He's got 90 games left of his 100 total blitz, I think. But anyways, I think it's a cool idea. So bishop to e3, castles, f5. We can play out this entire two GMs playing against each other, so it's a very accurate game. White gets a lot of play on the queen side, never really goes for the attack on the king side that's the most thematic in non-Maroczy bind Sicilian positions. So yeah, bishop to g5, bishop to e3, and white's doing fine. Pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes, king to f7, and it's about equal. So anyways, white's up about a pawn. It looks like there's some inefficiency with a4 here. a4 leads to bishop to b2. Bishop to b2 makes the defense of this c5 bishop complicated. I think that the engine finds bishop to b2, rook to c4 or 2, but say rook to c4, bishop takes b5, pawn takes b5, and then bishop to a3. And this is tricky. Cool. Yeah. Thanks very much for joining the stream, Haroop. Thank you very much for being here. Always feel free to watch video on demand. The video on demand is available for 14 days on Twitch and forever on YouTube. So it might be something that you're interested in. And yeah, no worries. Thanks for being here. So yeah, bishop to h6, bishop to e3, yeah, white's in pretty good place. But yeah, so this ends up equalizing, this ends up being a draw. But I think overall this is fairly representative of how to play the Maroczy bind. Let's do this again just so we can take a look. Let's look Maroczy bind, GM games, file type PGN. The important part here is the file type PGN. Let's look and we can find a whole bunch of games on GitHub. Basically this Maroczy bind situation. I think this should be in more than one game here. This was Shirov's game playing the Maroczy bind, another very early c4. But I'm gonna guess that this is gonna have kind of the same thematic idea. So in showing off games that have this early c4, let's see, e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, knight d4, g6, c4. Okay, so in the Accelerated Dragon, in particular, this seems to be when the GMs are the most likely to play Maroczy binds. This is interesting. Basically this situation leads to a much less kingside focused attack for white. So let's see where the play is on this one. It's again going to be on the queen side or the center. It's not going to be on the king side like a normal Sicilian. Okay, so basically here white's established a strong center, and here a5. Rook to d1, queen to b6, king to h1, rook to d8, and basically this is a solid way for white to play, and the king side's never really gotten compromised with h4, h5, g4. Overall, this just ends up being good for white. Pawn takes, rook to e8, f4, and now the king side attack can start, but it doesn't have the normal pawn storm Sicilian. So this is Shirov's game. This is a very, basically a demonstration of a very high-level game with the Maroczy bind. And these Maroczy binds tend to come out of this early, basically out of this early Accelerated Dragon at GM level. But yeah, Maroczy bind, move 4 or move 5, c4, c4 after the dragon move. This is playable at Super GM level. c4 facing off against g6, and basically here white is fine. Castles, bishop takes, f4, yeah, white's got 0.4 or something. Aphelion has his own line in the Traxler. That's one thing. It will have to go from being the yeah, so basically, Aphelions Traxler line. We can bring it up the next game that gets sent in with a Traxler, but Aphelion does know this theory extremely well. Um, so yeah. Anyways, let's see. Um, okay, knight to d5, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook to c8, b3. And white is basically a pawn up here. Yeah, no worries, no, go ahead. I'm always happy to look over Traxler games, but every Traxler game we look at on this stream is going to involve a review of the Traxler line. But this is a Shirov game. This is the early Shirov 6 points variation. Or basically this is the early Shirov game. But anyways, ideas like rook to g8, that can be good. Rook to f1 facing rook to f8. And overall this is good for white. So yeah, another 2700 playing this. Shirov. And we can keep looking. There's going to be a whole bunch of these. But what I think is helpful here is basically this, this ability to look over games in a new way. You can find these databases. These databases are available on public places online, and with those uploads, you can find those and do this. So e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4. And on g6, knight to or c4. But what's always reflected in these games is that the play is not on the king side; it's on the queen side. So two players played this game against each other twice. This one has a bit more of a this one involves more bishop maneuvering than the other one. But basically, all the play on the queen side. Let's take a look at the other one in this set of games. This is a different Maroczy bind played between the same two players. Yeah. Let's take a look. This is another one on g6, c4. So the Maroczy bind seems to be coming up most commonly in these GM games as a response to g6. If g6 doesn't immediately challenge the center, c4 becomes playable for white. That's when white gets it in as an opportunity. These games, again, will involve a lot of maneuvering on the queen side, as opposed to play on the king side. So it's really up to. Thank you very much. Sorry. No. So totally, I agree with your idea, Smiggy. We've done a few viewer tournaments. Those are fun. I was thinking maybe we could maybe we'll do a simul tomorrow. Those simuls I like too. The simuls are cool because the simuls we can basically turn into, we can turn into lessons. So maybe we'll do a simul tomorrow morning, Smiggy, because I like your general idea. And yeah, and I love the viewer tournament that Aphelion was setting up. I thought that was cool. But yeah, simuls are cool. Those are fun. So maybe we'll do one tomorrow morning. I'll check the schedule. I was a little delayed in putting out the schedule for this morning, but I should be able to get that out, definitely by tonight. Anyways, the question of this lesson was what can we do with the Maroczy bind? And the Maroczy bind is is it basically about coming up with an idea of coming up with more queenside play. So this is the Con Maroczy bind. We can look at this, but again, this is the Pro Chess League, and this is going to involve kind of similar stuff where you're going to have a yeah, cool. No, I'm totally I'm in for that, Ansh. I think it's a great idea. Basically this c4, queen to c7, knight to c3. This is going to also involve play in the center and queenside for white. It's just not going to involve that normal h4, h5, g4 structure. So this is, we've looked at a number of high-level games. These ones are FMs. The previous ones were GMs. But what we can really see from this situation is that c4 is early c4 is a very playable line, but it doesn't tend to pair with h4, h5, g4. It tends to pair with a queenside attack and play on the queen side for white. What is not necessarily thematic in the in the mainline Sicilian is thematic and appropriate in the early Maroczy bind Sicilian positions. So we've gone through 4 or 5 of these now. I hope this gives kind of a good overview in terms of like what what you should do and how this differs from a normal Sicilian. This c4 faces off well against the c4 faces off well against that g6, that early play. So, anyways, interesting stuff. I think that should give some good insights on that. But basically, play in the center, play on the queen side out of the Maroczy bind. If that's if that's your choice of what to play here in this situation, go for that. Looking at a few more lines, lines like queen to c7, knight to f6, knight to c6, but knight to f6 is the most common line threatening this f4. On this, knight to c3, queen to c7, and then kind of it's up to white, but a3, bishop b6, bishop to e3, bishop to b7, and white has some solid play. So, anyways, this is good. I think this is all all pretty solid. And defense and play on the queen side and center is white. That's really what this is about. d6, bishop to e2, bishop e7, castles. White's looking fine, no issues, and things should be pretty solid. But yeah, anyways, I think this is a good plan. I think this ends up being pretty solid for white, and it demonstrates that the immediate kingside attack is not necessary in the Sicilian. Thematically, if you play the con, or you basically play the con Maroczy or the Maroczy against the dragon, the play can comfortably be for white in a way that is in a way with a favorable eval on the king side or on the queen side and center. White's showing a good eval here. White is solid and basically no issues on the king side because of this. So, anyways, interesting ideas and good play for white. So I thought this was cool. I think that demonstrates kind of a different Sicilian theme. So if you go all in with c4, then your play is not going to be on the king side. It kind of makes sense. c4 is not a move that advances your situation on the king side. So if you're playing c4, playing in the center, playing on the queen side, that's where it's going to be. Anyways, interesting stuff. I think we can move on to the lessons now. The first one was one that Eccentric Course sent me. This was from the last simul that we played. Basically, the simul's are fun. I'm gonna do one tomorrow morning. I think you now that we've talked about it, I think that's a good idea. But yeah, so this is Eccentric Course versus me in the simul. I think he might win this. Yeah, I think he wins this. So this is the first simul that we did. Let's take a look. Castles, knight to d5, and basically this is probably overly aggressive for white. We're out of theory here. Bishop to g5 is earlier than most theory, but knight to d5, bishop to e7, knight takes, queen to d2, and basically here, black is already up. White has neutralized this knight, and it hasn't really done much. This bishop on e7 wasn't tremendously valuable for black. So let's just go back to the beginning. We'll take a look at this. Basically, the black plays the Petrovs, and turns into 4 knights, d3, bishop c5, and then bishop to g5. Castles, and we're out of theory. Knight to d5, bishop to e7, queen takes. Hey, good morning, Lauren. Thanks very much for joining the stream. Good. For me, it's the early morning, but yeah, no, everything's going well, and yeah, thank you very much for joining and being here on the stream. This ends up being pretty good for black. This knight trade on d5, I think this is an error for white. So knight takes here. And the eval shifts pretty aggressively towards black. So like here, the eval is, with bishop takes f6, eval is about even. Bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, is solid for black. Doesn't offer black too much. But knight takes e7, queen takes e7, and this eval, this minus 0.36 eval is good for black. So black is winning. In terms of ideas for white's going to try to push hard on this king side, but this may not come to anything. So that's that's something to consider. So h3, bishop to e6, g4, and again, white is attacking on the king side, but not in a very effective way. The eval is while white is attacking, the eval is shifting towards black. The move here for black, the most challenging one is d5. D5 is pretty interesting. You obviously can't play knight takes d5 at any point, but d5 challenges the center for black, and it basically matches up these pawns. So one thing that's important about pawn play is that when you have adjacent pawns, this pawn faces off favorably against this d6 pawn because it secures a spatial advantage and neither can technically move. This e5 pawn faces off favorably against this d3 pawn. So when black has the opportunity to fix one of these, basically trade one of the pawns that's weaker for one of the pawns that's stronger, this trading tends to be better for the player who's removing his less advanced pawn. Yeah. No, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the thoughts, especially on yeah, no, I think yeah, I think you discussed some very good thematic concepts. I think your discussion on the topic of that tactic, basically continuing the attack as opposed to playing the reflexive defensive move, I think that is definitely a very good insight, Lauren, for sure. Yeah. So anyways, d5 facing off against e4. All right, knight to d4, better than, or knight to d4 is not objectively good as d5. But yeah, after pawn takes d5, white's in pretty good shape. And black is sort of coming up with, basically this set of moves was not a particularly good continuation for black. White has overextended. I think black can capitalize. But after g4, knight takes d4, pawn takes, I think white's starting to materialize his attack a little bit better. c5, f4, knight to d5. But here white has an eval, pretty good eval. This attack seems to be working. This this open rook file seems to be pretty strong. Bishop takes, pawn takes, rook to h6, and I think that basically white hasn't capitalized. What was a better continuation for white? Queen to h2 is what's getting proposed by the engine here. Queen to h2 and then queen to g7 looks good. And then rook to d2 and maybe get all three of the long range pieces onto the rook file. That seems to be what the engine is proposing. So say rook to e2, king f7, but basically try to get all three of these onto the rook file. Form up this battery. Yeah, Jen is still hanging out. Basically, Jen had a friend over, so Jen and Caitlin are hanging out in the other room. I'm not sure if they're awake or not, but yeah, they're around. Maybe they're on the stream. I don't know. If they're on the stream, they should say something, but they're just enjoying their morning. I'm gonna go out and get lunch, get breakfast for everybody after this. But yeah, anyways, bishop takes e5, pawn takes e5, rook to h6, and yeah, rook to h8, queen to c4, and basically, white's attack hasn't really come to much, and king to b1 is an inefficient move by white. I don't think this was a good idea. I don't really understand why. I mean, I was the one playing white. This was me in the simul. This was not a particularly good move by white, I don't think. I think better is queen to d5. That looks good. But yeah, king to b1, bishop to e8, and black is fine. None of this white attack came to anything. F6 pawn is well defended. Black has control over this open rook file, and all is well, I think. Yeah, black has good control over this rook file, and the situation has shifted for sure. Yeah, and white's bishop is terrible. Yeah, you're making a really good point about that, Lauren. That is definitely true. So, anyways, this all looks good for black. Yeah, for sure. That is definitely true. This bishop is basically worthless for white. Good point. Yeah, I think in terms of this, this situation, What can we really do here? These bishops. This was kind of an ill-fated idea for white. Bishop to e7, queen takes e7, and queen to d2. But basically, this is about equality. That trade on knight takes e7 wasn't particularly helpful for white. But this ends up getting pretty bad for, or this is way better for black after everything gets neutralized. So anyways, there was an opportunity here, but white doesn't attack effectively. It sort of shows the value of introducing all of your resources here. If you play rook to h6, and then queen to h2, and then rook to h1, this tends to be strongest for white, and this is all, this is all good. So king to b1 is an error for white, and that tempo was really key. So here, rook to d2, queen to f7, queen to d5, and white is comfortable. Queen takes d5, e takes d5. White made an error there. So this two bishops here, right? This played out badly. So you're making a very important positional point here, which is definitely true. These two bishops facing off against this situation, it's definitely a good trade for white to play bishop takes e5. This posted knight in this closed position is way better for black than this bishop on g3. But at the same time, this white bishop is almost unrecoverably bad. In order to fix this white bishop, white would probably have to play bishop to d2, rook to d1, bishop to d1, c3, bishop to b3. That's a lot of work to do to improve a single piece. So you're making a really good point, Lauren. I think that this ends up being problematic for white. The more pieces that trade off, the more glaring the difference is going to be between the relative strengths of the two bishops in this situation. Also in an endgame, this white squared bishop. What about rook to d2? Yeah, exactly right. So rook to d2 is what white was an improvement for white in this attack. In this situation, after pawn takes rook to h6. Now now either rook to g6, and you have this. So instead of f5, rook to d2. Interesting. Sorry, r2 d2. Okay, cool. I didn't get that for a second. I thought you were talking about the rook on the second rank. Yeah, no, I understand. It took me a second. But yeah, rook to h4. I think the good opportunity to maximize on this attack for white. I think better was when white played f5. Let's look at Lauren's thinking. This I think was a positional error. Yes. Well, I'm even looking at what if just e takes d5? Isn't this pawn just? I think this knight is just hanging. So the knight hangs. Bishop takes b1. Yeah, why king b1? Yeah, no, I agree. King b1 was a big error for white in this situation. So any move which opens the position, I think that's right. This gets really locked together. So yeah, white is playing in a thematically incorrect way. These two bishops should be no, I completely agree. I think that this these making this position so closed in a position where white has two bishops is really an error for white. So better was pawn takes d5, and then and then on bishop takes d5, just king d1 probably. Why was king b1 given a double question mark? Well, the first thing is king b1 here. It basically makes this so king b1 is just a waste of a move basically. Ideas that are that improve the position here include queen to d5, in which case rook to d8, and then rook to d2. This advances white's situation in a recognizable way. King to b1 I don't think really helps with anything, to be completely honest. King to b1 is kind of a weird simul type move that is not helpful for white. So, anyways, uh, yeah, no. I think you're making I think your points here are excellent, Lauren. When you come up with these positional ideas, I think they're great. No, not at all. No, thanks for bringing these things up. I think your conceptual ideas, Lauren, are great. You come up with some really good things. So feel free. How many years did it take me to become an NM? I mean, to be fair, it didn't really. The answer to that question is about 7 of serious play. I went from I went from I think 900 to uh, I went from 900 to 2200 in about 8 years. That's about how long it took me. So I'd say 900 to 2200. I mean, no, I think that I mean, I don't know, Lauren, but I think that tactics, probably are the next place to look. But I think that you are making a very good point. I think your fundamental play is very good, Lauren. So yeah, I would say that tactical play is a good plan. So anyways, king to b1, bishop to e8, bishop to e2, and white's fine. Or white's basically here. Without this king to b1, white is fine. Queen to d5 tends to be better. And yeah, bishop to e8 I think is not the strongest. Better's probably, yeah, pawn takes b6, sure. Yeah, it is, and the rook gets this open file too. So, anyways, white yeah, I think yeah, this situation is not great for white. So yeah, pawn takes, and yeah. Anyways, this situation ends up being good for black. The more simple that it gets, the better that the better situation that black is here. But overall, I think that I think basically white has had an attack. There were effective opportunities for white here, but yeah, I think Lauren makes a good position, or a good point about closing the position. I think f5 was an error. Just the straightforward pawn takes d5 here. I don't. I think this was an improvement for white tactically. But yeah, I think that's about right. So f5, bishop to d7, and yeah. Black, yeah, no, black plays a strong and coherent game. So I don't know, interesting situation. In terms of improving this play for black, since black sent this game in, I like the way that black played this. White seems to be playing aggressively, so the kind of straightforward, developing moves for black seem to be pretty good. D6, H3, bishop to E6, and yeah, this is all good. G4, knight to D4. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think basically knight to D4 is probably a mistake here. I think D5, which straightforwardly improves your pawn structure, and gets your bishop into a better diagonal. I think this is a good idea. So D5, pawn takes D5, bishop takes D5, and black is comfortable here. I think knight to d4 allows this doubling of the black pawns on the d file. I don't think this is particularly strong for black. Among other things, I think that queen to g4 or queen to b4 immediately might be playable. There might be some tactical refutation of this, but the queen has the the look at both. I guess c5, yeah. So queen b4 isn't playable because c5 on the next. I think that d5 instead is a much better play for black here. B4, bishop to g3, c5, and black is, basically white is comfortable. So I think that this center play is really the part of the game that black might want to revise. Once this attack gets launched, I felt like black played good tactically resourceful defense, and white's attack was fairly underwhelming. From here, I don't think there's much value in looking at this eval. Black, the situation does get a little bit simplified, and I think maybe the eval goes a little bit towards equal, but again, this is a pretty bad situation for white. So I think the game's pretty much over. In terms of yeah, no. Basically, black has the main opportunity for white here was on pawn takes d5. Black has solid tactics, so d6, h3. This ends up being pretty good. But yeah, this knight to d5. This was a I think this center play for black was not 5 and then knight to d5. I don't think this attack is particularly sound. Pawn takes d5 for black. White is up a piece. So I think that this overall was the place in this game for review for black. This kind of attack leads to white play on the king side. White doesn't quite optimize. I think better ideas here were like queen to h2, queen to h3, rook to d2, and getting all three of the heavy pieces onto the queen side. So I think those were the improvements. I think that ended up, and I think once that happens, all is sort of position. So I think we're knight takes d4, pawn takes d4. This was an error, and I think the additional errors here were the additional errors here involved just this center play. So in order, errors, I think knight to d4, and then knight to d5. Black's play was solid. These errors are not so knight to b4. They're preferring knight to e3. Knight to e3 does look a little bit better than knight to b4 here. Yeah, sure, Alexander. If you join the simul tomorrow morning, Alex, we can do we can take a look at your game. But yeah, I was gonna do a simul tomorrow morning. We maybe game in 20 or so, or game in 25, and then but yeah, if you want to play, join the simul tomorrow morning. It'll be tomorrow morning during the 8 a.m. stream, and you can definitely send the game afterwards to the review, and we'll go over it. But yeah, I was gonna do a simul tomorrow morning at during this time slot. So yeah, I was thinking that we could do that. Maybe like game in yeah, I don't know, maybe game in 30 with a 10-second increment or something, or game in 30 with 30. Probably game in 30 with 30 is the best way to do it. But we'll do a simul tomorrow morning, and then we can play. So yeah. So yeah, the improvements for black in this game, knight to d4 and knight to d5. After that, black plays a good, solidly and also here when the knight's on d5, knight to e3 is better than knight to b4 here. Taking this outpost is strong for black. So I think I recommend playing this knight to d5. Anyways, those are the improvements. I think those give kind of a good a good set of 3 moves to consider. And yeah, this game overall, I think black played excellent, tactically resourceful defense, and good things happened as a result. So anyways, interesting situation. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, no, thanks very much. Thanks for sending the game, Eccentric Horse. Good job. This is Eccentric Horse playing in the last simul that we did, and Eccentric Horse getting a win. So good work, good game, and yeah, nicely done. Let's take a look. There are more here. There's 2 more, and the first is from TK, and the second is from The Real. And let's look. TK is playing here. Let's load his game. Yeah, no. I mean, this shows this is what happened in the last simul. A lot of people got some very good games. Eccentric Horse won, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So where's the simul? The simul will be on chess.com. Everyone can just match me to game in 30 with 30-second delay, and we'll do that. So yeah. Anyways, this is interesting. So basically here, I like the way that TK plays this. I think D5 against the ready makes sense. C5, bishop to G2, and overall black has a solid position. Pawn takes D5, queen takes D5, knight C3, and black is fine. So yeah, King's Indian attack, and D3, knight to F6, bishop to D2, and castle. Basically black. Black has, I think, a solid position. I mean, the eval seems to be favorable to white here, but I don't think there's anything particularly bad for black in this situation. Until castle's equality is given after bishop to d7. So say bishop to d7 and the situation's getting evaluated as equals. Lines playing this in a reasonable way. This e5 pushing this pawn in the center, that makes sense. And overall, I think this is good. Okay, so white plays an error, bishop to h6. This is premature. On bishop takes h6, you can play, you can basically post your knight on d5. So this is situation, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, and then the engine is suggesting knight d4 immediately. This is interesting. I was looking at the bishop takes f3, knight to d4 line. But yeah, you can't actually just play knight to d4. Because on knight takes, pawn takes, and this knight is pinned to this rook, and basically the knight on c3 is gonna get lost. So yeah, that's interesting. E5, rook e8, and then black is basically this is white black doesn't capitalize on this bishop to h6 move. They instead play knight to d4 immediately. With knight to d4 immediately is an idea. I mean, you're posting the knight, so how bad could it be, right? But actually, the better tactical play here was bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, knight to d4. Yeah, no, thank you very much for joining, Alexander, and please feel free to join. Basically, feel free to watch video on demand. All of these videos are available for 14 days online, and they're available forever on YouTube. So yeah, feel free to watch whenever you like, Alexander. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so there's not much to be. I think that I think Lauren is saying basically. I think that bishop takes h6, and you have kind of a more confrontational structure here. Here, knight to d4, and you can play knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, and this pin on c2. If you just play knight d4 immediately, white can neutralize this and not have any problems. So knight to d4 here was played, knight takes d4, and this doesn't really do all that much because bishop takes g7 can be played. I'm looking at bishop takes h6 immediately. I assume that there's some good refutation for this. Knight to c6 is the refutation. This breaks the pin, and yeah, that is interesting. Knight to c6. So looking at this engine line, knight to c6, bishop takes c1, knight takes d8, and basically white is pretty solid. Yeah, no, of course, Alexander. These lessons are free. Very happy to make them free. I think chess lessons should always be free. And I think modern tech allows us to do completely free chess lessons. So I think this is great stuff. But yeah, thank you very much for sending for being here, Alexander. Please feel free to send to come as much as you like. White is not aggressive enough. Yeah, interesting. Pawn takes. So bishop takes, which puts white in a more committal position. This can be exploited by knight to d5. I think that this is a good strategy. Rook to c1, bishop takes, knight takes, pawn takes, and queen d3 here. This is good for black. Now this white queen is a bit displaced. Black's pawn structure is better. Yeah, I mean, simplifying with e4, that's interesting. Because I would figure that e4 would help out this by undoubling these pawns here. But e4, I guess, is helpful because this e4 pawn is somewhat isolated, or this e5, e4 pawn is somewhat isolated on black's position. So anyways, lots of interesting concepts. Pawn takes, and here white there we get into kind of a more and more volatile tactical position. Rook c d8, bishop to g2. With c4 here, white is starting to kind of cement an attack. Rook to d1 could be helpful, d4, but white basically has a connected pass pawn in this scenario. So white's going to have a good positional advantage with this being played. I assume white wins this game. Let's just look. White is playing with these passed pawns. And yeah, wow, great job. All right, so TK ends up with a 24 win over 24,500. Nicely done. I mean, I know it's a blitz rating on chess.com or whatever, or Lead Chess, but overall very solid game for black. Nice, good win over 2,500, always a good sign. So let's take a look at the areas for improvement for black. I think that the opening made sense. I think that playing this center pawn opening against white's flank opening, this makes perfect sense to me. Black is better. So yeah, b6, bishop to g7, queen takes, and basically I think simplifying was probably an error. But yeah, g6, c4, bishop to g7, and pawn takes, queen takes, knight c3. This looks good. Queen to d8. White is up by about a pawn. I think that errors here. This structure is good. I like this idea. Better, I think, is d4. Now you've sort of turned it into like a reverse Benoni. That's pretty interesting. And it controls the center for black. Black can get bishop to g7 in on e3 undermining move, bishop to g7, and then pawn takes d4 plans. But yeah, this should be good for black. So yeah, an improvement here was d4. D4 is better than bishop to g7. So this is a big takeaway in terms of understanding kind of the positional aspects of the Benoni. You have the opportunity to basically simplify the position with a hyper advanced pawn. So d4 is better here. d4 and black has better control of the center. So that's what I'd recommend. Bishop to g7 is too passive. d4 cements permanent center control. Queen takes d5, knight to c3, and all of this looks good for black. Bishop to d2, another passive move for white. White does much better with something like bishop to e3, threat making an active threat. Bishop to d2 just sort of develops without really developing to a square that's all that much better. There's kind of some movement back and forth, but basically in terms of moves that black can play to play better, the first of these is d5. D5 cements control of this. D5 cements control of this center. Once c4 is played and white's playing to exchange the c pawn for the d4 pawn, don't make this trade of the superior pawn for the inferior pawn. Just play d4 and control the center here. Good stuff. This was an error. d4 is better. And d3, knight to f6, bishop to d2, castles, and black is doing fine. Bishop to g4, rook to c2, rook to e8. I think there are some small inefficiencies for white here. The engine is proposing bishop to g4 over e5. I don't really dispute e5. I think e5 is basically fine. E5, a3, bishop to b4, rook to c2. Maybe bishop takes f3 and then knight to d4 is good for black. But yeah, overall I think all is well. E5 is principled. Right. I mean, it basically puts this it puts this pawn on a better square, and all sort of well from that. I like e5 black making a play for the center. At least fundamentally, it makes sense. Again, agree with Lauren. In terms of how this position basically slips into white's advantage, I think d takes c3 is an error. this bishop takes f6 is something that black has to deal with. So overall, this trade was weak. If bishop takes g7, king takes g7, black is better. Knight to e4 doesn't really offer much of improvement. Knight to e4, and then knight takes, and black ends up with control of the c file. So say knight to e4, knight to e4, bishop takes e4, and then opportunities arise with, like, I don't know, bishop takes e2 is interesting. That looks like a winning, a material winning piece for black. This bishop takes e2 is fine improvement for white. So anyways, this overall this overall situation, I think this ends up this ends up being a better tactical play. So bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and black is better. So this was an improvement tactically. Again, I don't want to focus too much on the tactical improvements. The engine lays them out already. This bishop to h5. I think this was an improvement. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Mora. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Thanks for being here. Bishop to h5, and black is looking good. Bishop takes e2 is playable, but the errors for black were primarily to do with pawn takes c3. This was a tactical line that plays out way better for white. Here white can relocate to rook b1, queen b1. Everything's good for black. E4 is another move. I don't think that that's particularly playable. So bishop takes, and I think white's just fine. I don't think there's anything really bad happening for black in this, or for white in this scenario. So e5 e4 I don't think challenges white. Ideas could include b6, rook to c7, rook to c8 type ideas, but e5 just hangs the pawn. It's the type of thing, it's like, it looks like it creates tension, but I don't really think it helps too much in terms of improving the position. Bishop to g2 allows bishop takes e2. That was an error. White should just ignore it and play like c4 probably. Keep this bishop blocking this e2 pawn, but just hanging the e2 pawn is a big mistake for white. Now black's back to better. And on rook to d5, b5 could be played, challenging the defense of this rook. So b5 and then like king to h2, and you get to win the c4 pawn. That's a better play for black. So overall, a lot of tactical complexity. Black ends up winning after a huge tactical, a very long, tactical battle. But yeah, so improvements for black in this game, we can go through one by one. Here's the one that I want to focus on the most, because it's the most thematic or most related to kind of understanding as opposed to tactics. d5 here, not trading off your c pawn, or not letting white trade off his less good c pawn for your great d5 pawn. d4 is the move. Turn it into a Benoni and make sure that this pawn gets stuck against white in the center for the rest of the game. All right, bishop to g7, and black is fine. No big errors here. And then I think that here, bishop takes h6 was a big opportunity for black. Bishop to h6, queen to c2, knight to d5. This causes white some serious problems, because knight isn't takeable on d4. You had the right general idea with knight to d4, but it should have come after bishop to h6, because now this knight can still effectively take on d4. Not super helpful to black there. Anyways, this is all good. No issues, and yeah, and basically trades off. Black has good endgame play, ends up winning this. So the places for improvement in this game, I think d5 instead of allowing pawn takes d4. So here, just turn it into the Benoni with d4, and basically you're in a good place as black with a sustained pawn, harming white's development in the center. And then all this is good. e5 is given as an error. I think this is actually fine. I think e5 at least makes sense here, at least creating kind of more play in the center for black. And then this tactical situation was another one to look at. First, bishop takes h6. and then knight to d5. And then secondly here, pawn takes c3 is definitely worse than just king takes g7 here. So this tactical combination was not was a place for improvement for black, and I think along with, so basically the ideas are d4, and then is the first, turning it into a Benoni, and then the second is keep a close eye on that. Keep a close eye on opportunities, tactical opportunities arising related to bishop takes h6. Bishop takes h6, knight d4 is playable for black, but the bishop takes h6 and then the three moves roughly after that get a little bit tangled from a tactical perspective. So I think that was better. Anyways, interesting stuff, interesting situation, and I think those are two improvements for TK there. So, anyways, interesting, and thank you very much for sending that game, TK. On to the last one for this morning. So this is the Reels game. The Reel is playing Devilish Knight. Yeah, great game, by the way. Great upset win. Yeah, you capitalized tactically when you needed to. That made a lot of sense. Was very strong. So good work. Good work, TK. Thanks for sending in the game. And yeah, very interesting. So this is the Reels game. So d4, c4, e6. White's getting a big, big advantage here. Black's playing kind of a constraint. Yeah, great play by White so far. I like this. This is, I basically, White is playing a good center control, and Black is not challenging. So yeah, if Black's not challenging, continue to advance the center, develop quickly, develop a spatial advantage in good center. So knight c3, e4, all of that. e4, knight c3, and White is just very comfortable here. There's no reason to overextend. I think White can just comfortably hold this center together, and exploit when you have a good opportunity. But just play calm, easy development, and all of this is good. So just strong, good play by White, and good ideas. E5 is a break that Black basically needs to make to free things in the center. I think pawn takes d5 is better than I think that d5 is, or this pawn structure is just good for White. If you're playing basically a large center opening against a flank opening, this is overall just good for White and solid. E5, e takes d5 is playable here. I guess we're out of established opening theory, but I think that d5 is better for White than pawn takes d5. You've really constrained Black's position here, and with d5 you're kind of permanently closing. First, White has a huge spatial advantage, huge center control, all good for White on that front. But yeah, this situation ends up very good for White here. This all holds together, and things are solid. So d5 over pawn takes d5. That's the big change, an improvement for White. This is going to be a pawn structure that's going to disrupt Black probably for the entire game. It's also just not one that Black can undermine very easily. It's like the French in the best possible situation, right? As opposed to French where Black is trying to undermine d4. This is kind of the inverse of that, where White has just full center control and will be able to comfortably replace his pawn. On a trade like c6, White can play c takes. Philidor, right? Yeah, sorry. So d5 and then c6 and then pawn takes d5. White will be able to replace the c pawn. C takes d5, and things will be comfortable there. Queen takes, bishop to d3, knight to d5, and White is fine. White's up by 4 points. All looks well. Let's just watch White. White should be able to close this out. I think all of this was good. And yeah, no, this is just a win for White. I mean, honestly, I don't think there was a tremendous improvement there. I think basically White is solid pretty much the entire way through. White seizes the center control. Black doesn't play a challenging enough center, but I think the Reels made some great ideas here. Yeah, I mean, d5 I'd like better than pawn takes d5 here. I think d5, really restricts this center for black. C takes d5 allows black to free himself a little bit. This is the one move where I agree again agree with Lauren. I think that that basically this this play is very strong for white. But I think that this d5 is better than pawn takes d5. You have black very restricted positionally, and d5 is not really an overextension. If it was an overextension, then you have to be careful with things like that. But I think that d5 is better than e5 because this keeps black's position very constricted. e5 allows freeing moves, particularly for this dark squared bishop. After pawn takes, this dark squared bishop has really increased in value for black. d5, and I think pressure is d5 and basically black is fine. So yeah, d takes e5. I think d5 was better. Other than that, I think that black's play or white's play really makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations here. Knight takes e5 again. Trades off pieces. I think that this probably knight to d4 is better. Overall, you have a better pawn structure now. This e4 faces off favorably against this d6. So I think moves like knight to d4 are comfortably better for white. Yeah, Lauren explains this very well. So yeah, knight takes, bishop takes b6, and white's just good. There's a c6 is an error. c6 allows knight to c7. Knight to c7 definitely didn't have to be allowed here. That's a big tactical error for black. So yeah. Knight to d or knight to c7, and then there's a fork of the king on e8 and knight on a8. So this just plays out well for white. Yeah, why not? Lock the pieces in the center, so e5, d5, and white is comfortable. Black didn't have to allow knight to c7. Yeah, I mean, I basically, I think that's a pretty good summary. Yeah, so in this situation, what were the improving ideas here? So yeah, so I think that d5 is better than c takes d5. On d5, this pressure exerted by white and this restriction placed on black in the center, this d5 makes more sense from a thematic perspective. Pawn takes has the opportunity to improve black's dark squared bishop, so I would avoid doing that if possible. d5 just takes the spatial advantage, locks everything up. There's not really a good opportunity for black here, so I like d5 a lot. And things should be pretty comfortable. Knight to c7 shouldn't have been allowed by black, and then to be honest, I think that this all plays out very comfortably for white after this. I don't think there's much counterplay by black, and white just manages up a pawn in an exchange to close out a position pretty cleanly. So overall, great play by white. This is good. But yeah, this d5 here. D5 is an improvement on e5, and I think that here, d5 is much more comfortable. d5 and white has this sustained center control, sustained advantage. But you played well, after that. On knight takes d4, knight to d4 is better. Again, this bishop has kind of a mangled ability to improve. If you can just play knight to d4 and let this bishop be running into d6 for as long as possible, that can't be a bad idea for white. I think just letting this bishop face off against d6, that's just solid, good stuff. Once this trades off, it's a lot more ambiguous. Black has counter chances, white's minor pieces aren't tremendously better, and basically here, all is sort of well. So yeah, anyways, really interesting stuff. Good opportunities for white to kind of capitalize on some slow play by black. And yeah, this really just shows how much better, basically how a big center opening can, can exploit a passive center opening. E6 and D6 are just not that strong a center. This isn't a center that challenges white, and white's play, seizing the center and gaining this space advantage, provided a benefit to white for the entire game. D5 here, works to not correct any of black's problems. D5 and black is sort of struggling to come up with an idea. There's not really much there. D5 is a better play than pawn takes E5. Don't let black solve his problems. This is the main point. So yeah, I think that's I think Lauren again summarizes well. But yeah, so D5 and basically all of this is good for white. So yeah, that's the improvement. That's what I would say. Avoid offering white opportunities to improve his bishop here, or improve his dark squared mobility. Pawn takes d5 offers it the first time, and then knight takes e5, effectively gives it the second time. Yeah, no, thank you, Lauren. No, it's really helpful for you to participate. So, yeah, no, I agree. I think what you're saying is generally correct, and it's very helpful to have people participate in the stream. No, we didn't go over your game, Amet. I think your game is, let's see, the next game for Amet is, or wait, did we go over Amet's game? No, I don't think so, Amet. Amet's game is, was it yesterday morning? I don't know. Whatever we did, it was completely consistent with the schedule. So yeah, I don't see your game on the schedule for today, Amet. So yeah, we didn't get to it. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Lauren. Sure. So yeah, so I agree. I think Sam Sejuani's points is excellent here. He's basically saying, can you get a center emote? Good question. Good question, Lauren. I like it. Basically a center emote instead of tempo, maybe. I'll ask Jen. If she wants to do that. But yeah, I like it. That center emote is cool. We can also switch. We can also switch them out. So we could do this emote this time. There's Jen. Jen made the emotes, so she gets to have an emote that is her. I get to do the special Jen emote. This is the Jen emote that I think it requires a this Jen emote requires a some sort of special status. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was thinking we could wrap up. D5 stunts the development for black the entire game, like Sam Sejuani says. And no, it's okay. I mean, either way, the next stream is at 9:35 p.m. Eastern tonight. I'm going to try to work on the schedule today. One of the good things about having these games so far in advance is I think I can probably put out a larger schedule. The way that I've been doing it has only been 2 days at a time, but I think that I can get a way larger schedule together in terms of putting, basically, we have many days of games in advance now, so I can put together a bigger schedule than we've been doing. I think that'll be helpful. So yeah, anyways, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you all very much for participating and for asking such good questions. Yeah, it's really helpful. Thanks all for participating. Thanks all for giving this psychology of improvement. That's an interesting question, Lauren. Well, mine, I don't know if I would hold out mine as the most, I wasn't trying to play as actively as I could have, but psychology of improvement, the main of it, the main concept is just going to be, determination. Just, don't get discouraged at any point. If you stay in the room long enough, you end up in a pretty good situation. So that's the biggest psychology. Just refusing to get deterred is always the best the best advice. But yeah, I like the idea, Lauren. I'll try to come up with something Yeah, no, for sure. I'll try to come up with something like that. But yeah, basically, I think that advice on how to become a master. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I'll definitely think about that, Lauren. I really appreciate it. And yeah, no, everybody, thanks very much for being here. Thanks for joining us this morning. And yeah, I appreciate you all being here, participating, and sending your games. Next stream is at 9:35 p.m. Eastern time tonight, and hopefully I will see you then. Thanks. Bye.